We had one last week, and this is the second one. And it's already 7:01. I can see people are still joining, so I'll just want us to start. The rest shall find us going on. So maybe I'll ask one of us to pray first before we introduce the speaker.
All right, Amadilo, I could do that for us, and I could also just welcome the rest of us to KCPF.
Okay.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Karibuni sana. This is Kenya Christians Professional Forum, KCPF. It is a consortium under the family. It is a consortium of various ministries that have come together to bring you this particular session, but under the umbrella of KCPF. And we are gearing up towards the family symposium that will be happening in the month of May. And specifically, would like you to mark your dates that this event will be happening on the 16th of May, 2025. That is in the next 1 month or so, where we will be bringing different stakeholders who are interested in the family as God created it. We want to strengthen the family. We want to help people appreciate what God has ordained. Because if the family stands, the entire nation stands. So the family symposium will be happening on the 16th of May, 2025. We ask you to check out KCPF on our social media sites so that you can be informed concerning the details. But the event will be 1,500 per person. That is before end of April. And after April, it will be 2,000 shillings per person. It's going to be a whole day event where we're going to have roundtable discussions. We're going to have wonderful speakers that are going to speak concerning the family. And we're going to bring together our minds so that we can see how to strengthen our family in the midst of challenging times. So at this point, I would like to ask our speaker, Bansi, who is going to be taking us through this session. It is Wounds to Wisdom. It is session 2. Session 1 was there last week. Please check it out on YouTube in case you missed it. This one is also being recorded and we'll upload it on YouTube as well. I believe we're also live on Facebook. And after Bansi speaks, we're going to have our co-convener, Christabel, just again tell us about the symposium and make the final announcement so that we can gear up towards that event. So, Bansi, karibu sana. Please introduce yourself to these wonderful people and please take it away. We are waiting to hear what the Lord has put in your heart.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ernest, for inviting me or having me as a speaker today. So maybe we can just confirming, am I audible enough?
Yes, you are very clear, Bansi.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Let me just start by saying that I'm so excited to be taking us through this topic. It's usually a very let me say a very murky topic for many people, just getting to talk about trauma. But before we go into it, I just want to introduce myself. So I'm a born-again Christian. I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I really love and I truly enjoy my motherhood journey. I must say that. I'm also married to one Mr. Morris Masharia. God has also granted me an opportunity to work with people. I mean, for the past 15 years, I've been working with the youth, I've been working with the young people in this country, in this continent, and even in other continents. And I really thank God for that opportunity. I'm a board licensed cognitive behavioral therapist. So when it comes to human behavior and just how to equip, especially the young people, to navigate life, that's where you'll find me. I'm also the founder of Genius League International, and as Genius League International, we design programs, especially learning intervention programs for students. We offer mentorship programs for the youth. We do a lot of training for teachers and parents just to equip them in handling the young people. So yeah, so of course, because of my journey and my work, I've had a chance of traveling to quite a number of schools, interacting with the youth, and as I said, it's truly a passion of mine to it's my passion, it's my personal passion to really work with the young people. So today we talk about trauma, and I just want to really invite all of us to really feel free to share. If there's something that I talk about that you really resonate with, please let us know. If you have any questions, you can just jot them down on our wall, and we'll get to them. We'll get to address as many as we can. And as God wills, I would also love to share my personal childhood trauma story. The thing about trauma is that because it's a very dark spot in the life of a human being, we really struggle a lot to talk or even tell someone our trauma stories. And I really pray that today will give us an opportunity, first of all, to acknowledge that maybe, and not for everybody, but maybe there could have been something in your childhood or something that happened in the journey of your life that could be impacting you as an adult today, be it in your decision making, be it in behavior, be it in cognitive processing, be it even in health. So we're going to dive into it. And I think the first place I would really want to start is what trauma is not. Okay, there's this notion that that gets thrown around where people say that everyone has trauma. I mean, I've been in spaces where someone says, "Oh my God, I think I have trauma. I believe I'm traumatized," But let me just start by demystifying what trauma is not. Now, trauma is not disappointment, okay? And especially if you've been disappointed and that disappointment did not cause any impact, short-term or long-term impact, that's not trauma, okay? A good example would be you were supposed to meet someone at a certain time, they didn't make it at that time, and you feel, why didn't that person show up? Okay, that's not trauma. Okay, negative events that happen in your life, okay, because human nature, we are bound to experience challenges in life. Every day we are fighting a challenge. Okay, so if there's a challenge or a negative event that has happened in your life that did not cause any impact, lifelong impact on your health, impact on your memory, impact on decision making, then that is not trauma. Okay, stress is not trauma. Okay, and as I said, human beings, when you look at evolutionary biology, human beings were created with the systems and the mechanism to fight challenges. Okay, if you think about early man would wake up, go hunt. They don't even know what they're gonna get out there, and they would fight. They didn't even have very good weapons back then, but they were equipped for that survival. So anything that causes us stress, and that stress does not have a long-term impact, that is not trauma. A good example that I love using is an exam. When you're sitting for an exam is stressful. It's temporary because after that exam is over, it's over. Okay, so you don't think about it. You don't overthink about that exam. When you think about a deadline, maybe you have a deadline and you're really rushing to meet that deadline and it stresses you. But once that is over, that event is over, then the stress goes away. So it's a very temporary situation. So stressful events that do not have long-term impact is not trauma. Okay, so I just want us to clarify that. So what is trauma? So trauma, we say that trauma is an event or a series of events that happen in the life of a person that have a long-term effect. Actually, it's how we respond to those events. Okay, so trauma is it's actually the response. So something has happened to you. How do you interpret that thing? How do you feel about that thing that has happened? That particular event that has happened in your life. How do you respond to it? Now that is trauma. Okay. Let me give an example. Two children raised in the same house, wanachapwa wote na mzazi, but Later, when people are narrating their personal stories, one person really shares a very deep, they feel, they have all these very deep emotional recall of those experiences. And another one is looking at them and wondering, "Ay, ngoja kidogo, what do you mean? Were we not raised by the same parents?" So so trauma is the emotional response to an event that happens or a series of events that happen to us. And most of the times, these events will create some deep distress. We'll become overwhelmed in our reaction. Okay, so trauma will create an impact. Okay, a traumatic event will have a long-term impact, or it will even affect function as a human being, either in your sleep, in behavior, in how you relate to other people. So that is what we are looking at. We are looking at how did we react to certain events in our lives that are causing us to behave or do certain things right now in our adulthood. So let us look at some of these events or the types of traumas that we experience as human beings. So we have what we call acute trauma. Now, acute trauma happens, this is a single event that happens in the life of a person. And this can be maybe a sudden death of a parent or a sudden death of someone, an accident, something you hadn't planned for. Sometimes it's a medical emergency, okay? You go to hospital, you are not sick. When you get to hospital, they discover you're really, really sick. They have to take you in for a procedure. Those kinds of events cause what we call acute trauma. It's a one-time thing, but it has a ripple effect over a long duration of time. Then we have chronic trauma. Now, chronic trauma is repeated exposure to adverse effects, okay? So here we are looking at things like domestic violence. If you grew up in a home where you saw your parent being battered or being physically abused, then that, because it's not a one-time event, it's something that happens over a long period of time, then that falls in the category of chronic stress, okay? Childhood abuse, and here would look at, it can be sexual abuse, physical assault, beating children harshly, okay? When a child is overbeaten, and we've seen quite a number of cases, even on the TV, children go to school, and in as much as the government has abolished capital punishment or kuchapa, you find that some teachers still beat children, extremely. So you find that that can cause abuse in a child. Living in an area where there is a war, okay, or there is tension. And I know in Kenya, we have experienced a few civil situations where we have tribal wars or tribal fights happening. So that has a very strong chance of causing chronic trauma. Discrimination, okay? And especially for people who travel out of the country, you go to a country that is a different race, and you find that racism in itself, because you cannot change the color of your skin, it's not something that is about to end. It's over a prolonged period of time, okay? That causes chronic trauma, okay? Poverty. When you don't know whether you're going to have a meal today or whether you're going to have a meal tomorrow, or you have torn clothes, okay? And you're seeing your friends wearing good clothes, okay? I mean, there are times I go to do trainings in public schools, and it really breaks my heart when I look at some of the children, their sweaters are torn, and they are aware about it, but they do not have the power to change by themselves. They're not able to generate income by themselves. So that creates a sort of a traumatic experience for this particular child or this particular individual. Maybe joblessness, inability to provide for yourself or your family. Those are things that cause chronic stress. Then you also have illness in family, okay? When you are sick, you have a chronic illness, like you've gone to hospital, you are fine, you're told, hey, you have cancer, stage 2, that can cause trauma. if a child is growing up in a home where they have a parent who is critically ill for a long duration of time, that has the potential of generating chronic trauma. Then you have another category of trauma, which is complex trauma. And here is whereby an individual experiences multiple traumatic events, okay? You've come from a dysfunctional family, there's abuse in that family, there's neglect of children. So anything that causes multiple events that cause trauma, you've been involved in an accident, you have a lot of unresolved challenges. So you find that creates complex trauma. Then you have secondary trauma. This is whereby you experience trauma by observing someone else go through a traumatic experience. And this is very common with first responders. If you're a healthcare professional, sometimes you're in the emergency ward and you receive patients that, you can really tell there's a lot of traumatic experiences that they've had. Another place that we collect a lot of trauma is through news, just news on TV. When you watch news, and nowadays I usually share with my friends, man, if you just take 10 minutes to listen to news, I mean, it's bad news after bad news, terrible news after terrible news. And things are really, I don't know, things are just, I mean, there's just a lot of negative news on TV. So sometimes when you look at, when you're watching TV and you're hearing about Ukraine, people are fighting. You're seeing children in the Philistine, huko kwenye wamekuwa kifight. The children don't have food. They are sick. I mean, that can traumatize you, and that we call secondary trauma. So I think at this point, I'd just love to see, how does childhood trauma, or how does trauma impact us as adults? How would I know that, by the way, maybe I did experience trauma? Okay, so we'll just look at a few categories here. So emotional symptoms of childhood trauma. So one of the things that happens to people who have gone through trauma or childhood trauma is that they become really, really anxious and they are hypervigilant. And this is whereby you expect danger. Your body is just so alert that something bad is going to happen. And what happens is that when we are hypervigilant or persistently anxious, the body releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And what happens is that when your body is consistently on that production of high levels of stress hormones, then it begins to have a physical impact on your body. And we look at some of the physical impact that has. People have fear of abandonment. If you're in a relationship, you just look at someone and you're like, mtu ako karibu kuniacha. Okay, so you have that fear of being left. And especially if you went through abandonment or neglect when you are a child, you're likely to experience that fear of abandonment. Okay, we also have unhealthy attachment in relationships or friendships. Okay, you're in a friendship and it's a very toxic space, but you're not able to leave that space because you feel for some weird reason you derive some sort of safety. Okay, or you feel validated in that toxic environment. Okay, that could be a sign that you're dealing with some sort of trauma. Sadness, some people just feel sad and you don't know why you're feeling sad and you feel stuck. Okay, anger, people feel anger. Emotional regulation, sometimes you find that people feel like they don't deserve love. I don't know that you've ever been with someone, when you tell them, but then you look good today, they're like, really, I look good? You don't believe that you look good. When people compliment you, you really don't take it. And I don't know how many of us here have ever had that experience where you're not so sure. You're like, are you pulling my leg, kind of a thing. So sometimes when you've gone through childhood trauma or you've experienced trauma that caused an emotional scar, sometimes you feel like you don't deserve love, you don't deserve care, you don't deserve kindness. Okay. Then over apologizing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry all the time. Okay. And I found myself in this trap, where anything small, anything, you your first response is apologizing. Then we have avoidance. Some people avoid, they don't want to be with people, they don't want to be in a crowd. And then some people become people pleasers over time. So these are some of the things that we are able to observe in adulthood, but they may have a genesis from an event and our personal experience with some events in our lives. Then we have the next category we have is physical symptoms. So you may experience fatigue, sleep disturbance, and I would just love to share my personal story. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a family where I observed a lot of let me say there was alcoholism. So my dad, who by the way I really love so much, when I was growing up, he used to drink a lot, and his drinking made him violent. And being a child in that home, of course, there being no other adults, the person who would receive the wrath of my dad was my mom. Okay. So what would happen is that because I knew that most of the times when he would drink over the weekend, he would come home very violent. And especially for me, I don't know, for me, Saturday, Sunday were the worst days. And I think I've shared this with some people. I used to never have sufficient sleep on Saturday because so there's a way my dad would knock the gate or the door, and of course we'd go and open for him. And even if I was in the middle of sleep and I hear that knock, I would automatically wake up. And the reason why I would wake up is because I felt like I have the responsibility of protecting my mother. Okay? I felt like if my dad knocks on that, is to jump out of bed and go to where he is. Because when he sees me, or we are in the same environment, then he wouldn't respond in that, he wouldn't be so violent to my mom. So I felt like I was a shield to my mother. There was an instance that is very, very, very vivid to me. I remember one time I had overslept. I think I was I was a child, my goodness. I was like 7, 8 years old. So of course I was asleep, deeply asleep, and my father came and I don't know what happened. So I remember waking up because I had my mom screaming so loud. I had her crying, and her crying was it made me so scared. I rushed. First of all, I really blamed myself. Why did I not wake up? How come I didn't hear my dad coming or arriving? How come I didn't hear the knock? So I remember when I went towards where my mom was, I saw so much blood. I had never seen so much blood in my life. You can imagine being an 8-year-old child. First of all, I'm blaming myself because I didn't wake up on time to save my mom. And then because of sleeping, now my mom is in trouble. So my mom was oozing blood. I couldn't quite tell where the blood was coming from. And I remember it was so chaotic because
I think we lost Bansi for a moment. Let us just wait for her. She'll be back in a few. We are just having a technical issue. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, let's just be patient as we wait for her. She's setting up once again. Bansi, can you hear us? Bansi, are you back?
She's dropped out for a moment.
Just give her a moment.
She's back yet.
Yeah, let's give Bansi a moment. She's I think her internet device has just dropped out. Amadilo, please just text her in case perhaps she's going on with the PowerPoint presentation and she's not aware that she's dropped off. Meanwhile,
Yes,
as we are waiting for her, ladies and gentlemen, let's just remember that all these presentations concerning that we are making every Tuesday are leading up to the Family Symposium. The Family Symposium will be held on the 16th of May, 2025. That will be on a Friday. And we are going to be having wonderful conversations just like the one that Bansi is holding for us right here. Bansi, I can see your back. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
We were so
Trying to
captivated.
connect.
We don't want to lose it. We'll even remind you where you are. Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I was
Don't
like,
worry.
what
Don't worry. Internet happens at times. So let's just pick up where we were. You were telling us about
Okay.
walking into the room and you saw the blood. There was a lot of blood you saw
Yes,
from your mom. Please pick it up from there, and
yes.
would love to see your
Thank you.
screen again if possible.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I can be enabled as a host so that I can share the PowerPoint.
Definitely. Amadilo, please make Bansi a co-host or a host so that she can go back to sharing the presentation. We are
Okay.
loving the conversation so far. Meanwhile, as that is happening, I can read some comments. I can see a comment from Eunice Kangeze saying, I can relate. I can also see a comment from Stephen Jenga saying, complex trauma is so strong in mind. Family neglection is real and it keeps up with you every day. It messes up with your view about the world. It kills your vibration and social life with others. It makes you so radical in decision making. It's something I don't know how to pull myself from. It gives me uncalled tears, ripples of sadness, patterns of hopelessness when you really need help. And I can hear him saying, I need help. And then I can see Angeline saying alcohol and violence is a real thing. And then Eunice Kangede just responding to Stephen by saying, me too, me too. So Bansi, as you can see, people are really connecting with your presentation, really connecting. It's very educative. So please carry on with your testimony. You walked into your mom's room and you found lots of blood.
Yes, actually the blood was in the compound. So we used to live in a bungalow. So we had a front yard and a backyard. So the backyard, within not the home compound, there was so much blood in the compound. And I remember myself being so scared for what will happen. Like, I think for me, it was the fact that all the adults have left. I think we were just left, my small brother and I, and our house help, who also woke up from her sleep. And, just wondering, oh my God, how would life be for me without my mom? Okay. First of all, I have an alcoholic dad. And then now my mom was my anchor. So I was like, oh my God, what would happen to me, or what will happen to me if I lost my mom? So there was a lot of fear. Anyway, long and short of it, I mean, when you're a child, you feel so stuck because I didn't know if my dad would ever stop drinking. Honestly, I had grown up seeing him drinking violent. He had a very good job. So he would go to work, but over the weekend, he would really indulge. So for me, I never used to know, will this thing ever go? Okay. And with children, with a traumatic event, you either fight or you can flee the situation or you can freeze. A child cannot fight. A child cannot leave that situation. Okay, there's no flight. So what happens to most children is that they freeze. They get stuck. Okay, so I knew, considering that my father, he's the head of our home, there's nowhere I'm going. I really felt so stuck in that situation. And it was a very sad, now talking about it, I'm like, gosh, that was so much for a young Bansi to go through. I remember as a child, one of the things that I got robbed of was playfulness. Okay. I think when I became more aware, or I became more conscious of what was happening in our home, I felt like everybody in the estate knew. That's how I felt. And I believed it, because there were times my dad would be so dramatic. He would open the gate. My mom would run literally out of the compound. And he would, I don't know. I remember one time him throwing a sufuria on the road. We used to have a tarmac road outside our house. And I was like, oh my God, like everybody knows what's happening at Kinabansi's home. Anyway, the good thing about this story is that my dad is no longer that person, and I love him so dearly and so deeply. He's so different. He's changed. I mean, he's not that person. But that being said, I mean, some of those things that happened in my childhood, I mean, I saw them impacting me in my adulthood. Okay, I would not sleep. Saturdays, I would never get good sleep. I turned to church because for me, I felt like if I go to church and pray to God, then God can come and save the situation. I would feel that way. So I would, if I was not in school, so I would really read, like I was a very excellent student in school. I would really immerse myself in books. So for me, books were an escape. You know, I would read, I would enjoy, and it would, like, I would get away from what is happening in my real world. Okay. I would go to church, I would be in church. I served in church every Saturday, every Sunday, you'd find me in church. So for me, those were my coping mechanisms. Okay. And today things are different. Maybe if you haven't taken your child to church, for example, or you don't have any sort of organized religion, that's why children are immersing themselves in spaces that trigger pleasure for them. Okay, so social media, gaming. So you find that addiction in certain spaces becomes heightened because they are running away from a sort of pain in their lives. So that's what happened to me. I think at some point after high school. So when I went to high school, it was also a very scary time for me, because one of the things that kept running through my mind is that when I go to high school, which was a boarding school, who would be left protecting my mom? Can you imagine? I think I was like 15 years old, and I kept asking myself, when I go to school and my school is boarding, what would happen to my mom when I'm not around? And that used to petrify me. Honestly, it used to scare me. And I remember after high school, one of the things that happened to me is that I got sick. And when I went to hospital, they were like, you know, Bansi, you have an autoimmune disease. And I was like, those words were very strange to me. I'd never had anything like an autoimmune disease. So the doctors couldn't quite tell what was causing it, where it was coming from. But today, I understand that some of the trauma and the stress that I went through had a physical impact on my physical health. Okay. Something happened, something interesting. I remember one time my mom coming for parent-teacher consultation, and I saw her limping, and I was like, oh my goodness, this happened because I was not at home to protect my mom. So I really used to beat myself a lot. I mean, I was one very scared child. So some of these things that I'm talking about are things that I saw in my personal life, are things that I experienced. And I have been on a journey to heal, you know, that child, you know, that experienced that. So some physical symptoms of childhood trauma could be sleep disturbance. You get nightmares, insomnia. Some people get gastro issues or gut challenges. You realize that you have muscle tension. You're always tired. One of the things that I like asking people is that when someone admits or acknowledges that they have gone through trauma, I usually ask them, where is your trauma in your body? Where is your trauma? And it's very surprising that someone will show you physically on their own body where their trauma is seated. Okay, some people will touch their back, some people will touch their shoulders. You know, it's like there's some trauma or tension in your body that you live with for a very long time until you start addressing or healing from that trauma. Trauma causes autoimmune disease or inflammation in your body. Some people experience hormonal imbalance, again, because of the high levels of stress, the cortisol, we also have adrenaline that is released in your body. You find that those do have, they inflame your body and you become susceptible to disease. They weaken the immune system. Because of being hypervigilant consistently and cortisol increase in your body, some people develop or can develop cardiovascular diseases over time. Hypertension, you've seen people at some point in their life, you're like, you go to hospital and you're told you have high blood pressure, and you're like, where did that come from? Okay. Some people become hypersexual. Okay, and what happens with sex is that when people engage in sexual activity, the body releases oxytocin, which is like a feel-good hormone. And once that oxytocin is released in your body, after the activity, there's a calming effect. And for some people, that becomes their coping mechanism. So there's this very common terminology that goes around, what's your body count? And people are very proud talking about their body count. But in the area of psychology, we've discovered that, when people overindulge in sexual activity, sometimes you really need to find out what is it about their story. Could there have been something that happened? Some people become hypersexual. They don't want to engage in sexual activity. And you find that, and especially for individuals who have gone through sexual assault, rape, child defilement, you find that they do not derive any pleasure from sex. Some people even develop tightening of the vagina. It becomes extremely difficult. And of course, when these conditions are persistent, they'll definitely affect like a marriage situation. And you find that it needs to be addressed, and a professional needs to come in and just help with that. Then we have behavioral symptoms of childhood trauma. So some people they'll withdraw. Okay, for me, I kept away from interacting. I stopped playing with other children. I was always at home. Some people become really aggressive. We talk about adolescents who are rebellious, and some of the times they are rebellious because they are dealing with something. Maybe at home there's something that is not working. Maybe the parents are separated. There could be violence. There could just be a situation happening at home that is causing them pain, and they're looking for an outlet to release that pain. Some children experience academic challenges, and this comes because of the impact on our cognitive functioning. Some children become hyperactive. Because I do brain or cognitive stimulating programs for young children, one of the things that most of the parents will talk about is, my child is very hyperactive. My child has ADHD, and I usually ask, has your child gotten a proper assessment? Okay, how did you come up to that conclusion? So not every hyperactivity, not every impulsivity is because a child has attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Sometimes it could just be a coping mechanism from the trauma that they're experiencing. Attention-seeking behavior, and we see this a lot with adults. Perfectionism, again, I need to do it perfectly. If I don't do it perfectly, I'm a failure. Okay, so you have all these stories happening in your mind. Then you see some people turning into addictive substances, drugs, okay, alcohol. Some people will turn to pornography, okay. Others will turn into gaming, video games, which have become very, very popular, even with adults, because they create a simulation. You go into a world where you're conquering, earning points, but in your real life, that's not what's happening. So every time you come into the real world, you're like, this real world is not giving me the pleasure I'm looking for. So you go back into that simulation. Some people turn into self-harming. Okay, and I see this a lot, especially with high school students. They'll slit themselves, they'll slit their hands. There's a girl I was working with in one of the schools in Nairobi. She had scars on both her hands and both her thighs, and of course, when I had some conversation with this girl, I realized that there was a lot that was happening at home, so much happening at home. Okay, so you find that this self-harming behavior most of the times is because you're dealing with a pain in your life and you're looking to release that pain. Okay, some people become helpers and fixers. Okay, you're always looking for a problem to fix. Okay, that could also be stemming from a trauma that you have experienced. Then you have cognitive symptoms of childhood trauma, and this play out in adulthood. So challenges with memory, inability to remember. And what happens with trauma, because of the release of cortisol and adrenaline consistently, some parts of the brain are impacted, and one of the parts of the brain that is impacted is a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which has a role of helping us with memory. The work of the hippocampus is to help us as human beings to process memory. Now, for people who have gone through adverse traumatic events, and especially in childhood, one of the things that brain imaging has shown consistently, is a shrinking of the hippocampus. Okay, so you find that the ability to recall is affected. Sometimes you find that because of the impact on the hippocampus, people experience a lot of intrusive memories and nightmares. Okay, so you find that that part of the brain is heavily impacted. Another part of the brain that is impacted is the prefrontal cortex, which is literally in the brain. It's seated literally behind your forehead, and it helps us with decision making. And one of the things that we've discovered is that when individuals go through adverse traumatic events, then the prefrontal cortex, which makes decisions, is affected. Okay. And what happens is that you find that people make a lot of impulsive decisions. Okay. They're not able to think through what they are about to do, or they behave in a manner, maybe they get overly angry, and then they're like, why did I have to react that way? Okay. So logic and rational thinking is thrown out of the window. So you find that the prefrontal cortex is weakened. Okay. Another part of the brain that is also stimulated is the amygdala. Okay. The amygdala is responsible for emotions. We also call it the reptilian brain. And when you go through adverse traumatic experiences, the reptilian brain becomes activated. Okay. And I want you to think about a crocodile. Okay. If let's say a crocodile is hit, it acts it has very quick reflexes. Okay. Very, very quick reflexes. And what happens is that when we go through adverse traumatic events, we're not able to regulate how we react to stuff, and especially emotionally. So you find that part of the brain, or those parts of the brain, are heavily impacted by adverse traumatic events. Some people catastrophize. Maybe something is not so big, they make it so big. Some people minimize. Okay. Second guessing, which is very, very common. You always feel like, am I good enough? Was that decision the best? Some people also struggle with imposter syndrome in adulthood. So some of these things that we see play out in our adulthood today may have stemmed from an event that happened to us, or how we responded to some of the events that happened to us as in our journey of life. Now, the truth of the matter is that I believe most of us in this space, maybe not all of us, but a good number of us everyone has a story. Your story may not be the same as mine. Some people may have traumatic events that are not so adverse. Some people have had very adverse traumatic experiences. And what we say is that you cannot choose trauma. The events that happen in your life, you're not responsible for them. But once you are able to identify and acknowledge, my goodness, I think there's something that I haven't been dealing with. I think I have a black spot in my life that I actually need to go and revisit. I need to go and open this compartment so that I can heal it. The responsibility of healing from a traumatic experience is solely yours. You have the responsibility to begin that healing journey. And the good thing is that we'll be looking at some things that we can do here. What are some of the things that we can do to heal or to begin that journey? Some of us may have already started our healing journey, but we'll look at what are some of the things that we can do. Trauma, I remember as we were preparing for this meeting, we were saying, does trauma have a good side? Okay, because it looks all gloom and dark, but you'll be very surprised that trauma actually propels many people into success. Okay. Just as the statistics on the screen, up to 70% of trauma survivors would report that the trauma.
What on earth are you doing there? Can you turn this thing beside? Do you have textbooks? Stop the laziness.
Excuse me, please let's silence our microphones. Armadillo, please silence those who are speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, let's silence our microphones as Bansi is sharing. Bansi, please continue.
Okay, so you find that trauma can be a fuel for most of us. to become better parents, to become better individuals. Some of the things that I've highlighted may have a negative side, but can also be pretty advantageous. Okay, so trauma is not all dark and gloom. I think trauma becomes disadvantageous when it impedes you from functioning properly. Okay, if you're getting sick and you don't know where sickness is coming from, if you're getting stuck, if you're turning into different types of addictions, then you need to address that trauma. So trauma does have a good side. And what happens is that as you're healing, as you're going through your healing journey, you realize that you can actually turn some of those experiences into positive fuel for success in your life. So what are some of the things that we can do? And some of these are, one of the things that I know, and I've had many people say, is that therapy is amazing, but therapy is not cheap. Okay, so I'll also be looking at some of the things that you can do, even if you don't necessarily have to go and see a clinician or an expert or a professional. What are some of the things that you can do? So I'm going to start with the most structured solutions. And this is trauma-informed therapy. So under trauma-informed therapy, we have CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I use CBT every day, literally, as I'm working with children, as I'm working with families. And what we do is just to help, just to rewire the negative thought process. Okay, so CBT, and especially trauma-founded or trauma-based CBT can be very, very helpful when you're going for therapy. And you can actually ask your therapist whether they use CBT. Okay, so it can be very, very helpful in that way. Then we have what we call EMDR. So EMDR in full is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what happens is that people get to share their stories, as they're moving their eyes. So we have protocols for EMDR. And this has to be done by a professional. And what happens is that when people go through very adverse traumatic experiences, they experience something called dissociation. Okay, you feel like you're not connected. You don't have connection with yourself. Or sometimes narrating about those traumatic events causes you to be very, very emotional. Okay, it's very, very sensitive. And what happens is, when people get to share their story consistently, that story or the narration of that story over time stops being as sensitive. So the more you keep narrating, the more you keep sharing your story, the more you become more desensitized. So eye movement is one of the ways of helping with desensitization. Exposure therapy, and this again is sharing your story, just re-narrating the story, and the reason why we do that is not to re-traumatize you, is just to desensitize you from the emotional reactions of those traumatic events. Again, I must say this: exposure therapy cannot be done without the supervision of a trained clinician or a trained professional. Okay, you do not want to go and share your story and re-traumatize yourself and not know what to do after you are so sensitive. Okay, some people will use medication. If you go to a psychiatrist, they'll give you antidepressants, they'll give you anti-anxiety treatment. So we have that. Those are more structured treatments. Then we have some that are not so structured, and you can be able to do so. Deep breathing is very good for just helping to relieve you. Walking barefoot helps with grounding. Walking and hiking, very, very powerful. And so let me talk a little bit about walking in nature or hiking in nature. So plants release some chemicals called aerosol. Okay, we come across aerosol with sprays, the synthetic sprays, but plants release organic aerosols. And these aerosols, when we inhale them, they give us a calming effect. Okay, I don't know, for those of you who had a walk at Karura, the other day I got to take my children at Nairobi Safari Walk, and there are all these beautiful indigenous trees all over, and it's such a beautiful experience. Okay, so as you're taking a walk in nature, as you're hiking in nature, sometimes you just want to just talk about, or just think, or rather just to have a narration about some of these traumatic experiences, and over time it becomes easier. The aerosols you inhale also have a calming effect. Okay, dancing, we encourage people to do dancing, because when you move your body, you're able to release some of that tension that is packed in your body. Massages are very, very, very powerful. Then we have inner child work. So here is just acknowledging that, yes, this happened to me. Can I name the emotions that I felt? Okay, so here you're pretty much just reparenting yourself and challenging the negative core values that you have. Then, of course, lifestyle changes. You have to be very deliberate about sleep, exercising, you have to be deliberate, feeding, because of especially the physical impacts of trauma. They can be so impactful to the point where it impedes your health. Cold showers, very, very good to just help us deal with some of that suppressed emotions and trauma in our body. Yeah. I hope you've learned something. That is it for me. That marks the end of my presentation today. I know it was meant to be 1 hour, so we are still within time. So I think I would love to just hand over to Christabel so that maybe we can have some questions and see whether we can answer a few questions. Wow, thank you. Over to Ernest or Christabel.
All right, before Christabel comes in, let's just appreciate Bansi. Hasn't she done a good job? Ladies and gentlemen, just throw in there an emoji. Just throw in there, leave their comment. I can see comments coming in, Georgiana clapping. I can see Stephen saying, I survive and manage my trauma every day by being highly active in active sports. I play games for the best part of my life to escape the thoughts and be able to forgive all that I couldn't control. Perhaps you would try when you truly don't want to do it. Comes with plenty of other advantages. Thank you. Let me hand over to Christabel, who will handle the question and answer session. Christabel, karibu sana.
All right. Thank you so much, Bansi. That session was amazing. And I know many times when we come for our webinar or something, we always say it was amazing, but it truly was. I think it was enlightening. I like that you started with what trauma is not, because for many people, it has become like a buzzword. It's almost like gaslighting and other psychological terms. Because if everything is trauma, then nothing is trauma. And so it's important to recognize what the issue is and then adequately figure out how to process. I think also something else that stood out for me is when you said like the things that you can do on an everyday basis. You can be a lot more active, you can get more involved, even just as simple as a cold shower in the middle of an episode or something can just calm you down and just bring you back down from a very maybe hyperactive space in your mind. So thank you so much for all of that. I will invite anyone, if you have any questions today, you can either put them in the chat or lift up your hands if you have a question or a comment. We have just a few minutes left. So I see there's one comment. Angeline is asking, question. Angeline is asking, how should one help a young child or children who you feel have gone through trauma heal between the ages of 7 and 12? So, Bansi, maybe we can. Yes.
Okay. Wow. I think let me start by saying that there's this notion that I've heard many people talk about. People say that children are resilient. And the truth of the matter is that children are not resilient. Actually, children are very, very vulnerable. Okay. So I think for the parents that are in this room, I think that's one of the things that you really need to have at the back of your mind, that a child is a very, very vulnerable human being. And that actually, it's a very distorted notion that people have, that children are very resilient. They may be resilient in other things, but when it comes to traumatic events, they are very, very vulnerable. Now, one of the things that helps children to navigate trauma or traumatic events in their lives is a solid support system, very solid. A child needs love, a child needs physical touch, a child needs protection, because what happens if a child goes through a traumatic event, the first thing that shatters or breaks is their sense of safety. Okay, so the child becomes very vulnerable, and they begin now struggling with all the symptoms that we looked at. So their sense of safety is taken away from them. So when you know a child has gone through a traumatic event, the first thing you want to do, first of all, is to really cover and love that child. Okay, love and support can make the most traumatic event in the life of a child become, let me not say minimized, but they'll be able to navigate that traumatic event. Let me give you a very simplified example. If a child has been bit by a dog, for example, and they come home and the parent or the caregiver hugs them, tells them, I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, we're going to clean you up. We'll take you to hospital. You know what? You're going to be okay. When that child receives that support, emotional support, that instant emotional support, then it makes the biting of a dog not become as traumatic as it should have been. Now let's look at a child who has been bitten by a dog, has run home, and there is nobody whatsoever. That child will live with a constant fear of dogs. Okay, and I experienced that. By the way, I was bitten by a dog when I was young, and for sure I don't like dogs. They're not my favorite pets. So you find that emotional support, the love, the care, genuine care, physical touch, okay, and genuineness. You can't tell a child that I love you, but you're not available for them. So if a child has gone through an adverse traumatic event, the support system has to be so solid. You have to show them love. You have to support them. You have to allow them to discuss what happened, because if they don't have, because children don't have the language, but they can share with you how that thing that happened to them makes them feel, and you're able to work with them. It reduces the high impact of that traumatic event. Yes. I hope I've answered.
Yes, I think you have, very specifically. There's another question. Dana asks, how would you support a child who's experiencing trauma due to his parents planning a divorce and the father planning to marry their nanny?
There's also a question you skipped there by Josephine. I believe Josephine's question came first. Do you just want to read that
yes.
one, Sister Bell?
Can trauma affect an unborn baby?
Ooh. Wow, let me start with the unborn baby, then I go to the separation. So, believe it or not, there is something called epigenetic transference of trauma. Okay, so if I, the mom, for example, I'm carrying a pregnancy and I have high levels of cortisol, for example, or I am scared, or I'm experiencing some of the symptoms that we've just talked about, and they have a chemical hormonal impact. We've discovered that has the ability to change the genetic makeup of a child. Okay, people talk about intergenerational trauma. So intergenerational trauma can be passed through narration, can be passed through the action. Like, for example, let me give a very advanced case of FGM, female mutilation, FGM, or female genitalia mutilation. Okay, something like that. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. Okay, so that's an action which is traumatic. So that's another way of passing down trauma. Another way is through the genetic changes that happen when a child is in their mother's womb. And that's why it's very important, and especially if you're a young parent, it's really important for you to resolve some of these traumatic things that have happened to you, because there is a chance, and especially if you experience some of these some of these symptoms during the time you're carrying your pregnancy, it can impact or cause a change in the genetic makeup of your child. So yes, that's possible. Wow. In the case of a child who is traumatized by the separation of the parents, I think first of all, the parents really have to have a conversation with this child, because children are usually the biggest victims in a divorce situation or in a separation situation. They tend to blame themselves for a lifetime, literally. So parents have to be very intentional, one, in having a candid conversation, in an age appropriate conversation. Okay. Just let your child know that, yeah, we might have to live in different homes, but that doesn't reduce the fact that we love you. Okay. Of course, parents also have to come up with measures of meeting the emotional needs of these children, because, I mean, if it's irreversible, it's irreversible. So the best thing you can do is that parents have to provide that emotional support. And also, you may also want to consider getting an external or an outside professional to just walk the journey with your child, to help the child develop the coping skills they need, during that season. But yes, that's it. Thanks, Ernest. Female genital mutilation, yes, that's it. Yeah, so that it has to be very intentional, and it's a lot of work, and it needs to be done.
Thank you for that. Okay, so there are a few more questions. I will answer a couple more of them and then close out, because I see we are past our time now. Someone said, does it fall under dissociation, where you feel emotionally overwhelmed to a point where you feel like you are not present in the situation?
Yeah, that's a symptom of dissociation. When you feel in a very simple way, you feel like you're not yourself, or you feel like you're a visitor in your own body. That's dissociation. And adverse traumatic experiences cause dissociation in big time. Okay. And what happens is that when people experience dissociation, because it's a source of pain, people will always look for things to fill that space. They'll always look for something that makes them feel like they're themselves. Yeah, there are a lot of studies that have been done, even with some types of drugs, the psychedelic drugs that, people say they use them to feel like they are one with themselves or something like that. So yes, dissociation comes and you feel like you're not one with your body. Okay, and of course that will have an impact. It will have a physical, chemical impact. It will have a cognitive impact. It will have a health. It will cause some health challenges. So yes, dissociation is one of the things that needs to be dealt with when you're helping someone recover from trauma.
I think she asked as well, how can you deal with an emotional shutdown? I think essentially, how do you address the dissociation issue?
Okay, so I think the thing is, first of all, to acknowledge that yes, I'm experiencing dissociation. Could it be stemming from somewhere? Then you also be deliberate about your healing journey. Do you need to talk to someone? Okay, are there some activities that you can do? Maybe you can engage in physical activities. You can join a gym. Some of these things help, because you see, the psychosomatic symptoms that people have because of adverse traumatic events can actually be helped by doing physical things. Take a walk, do a dance class. Those are things that will help you with with some sort of relief and calmness in your body. But you must be intentional, okay? To get an expert on board, get an expert on board. But there are things that you can still do within your own capacity. Be intentional about movement, be intentional about your health, nutrition, be intentional about what you consume. So there are things that are still within your capability, even without having an external person. But if you have had an adverse traumatic event, it's usually recommended that get a professional, get someone. And a professional does not even have to be like a super paid therapist. You can get someone maybe in your church or in your social spaces who is skilled, okay, in ways of helping people cope. So you may want to engage with someone who can actually walk the journey with you, just first of all for accountability, and also realize that healing from trauma is a journey. It's not a one-day thing. You can't snap and tomorrow you healed of trauma. Okay, if it's been trapped or suppressed in your body for a long time, you also have to know that it's gonna take you a while. So you have to be very, very deliberate about your healing journey.
Thank you so much, Bansi. I think one thing that we've learned both from last week's session and this week's session is many times we expect things to be fixed in an instant, and it is a journey that we walk on a daily basis. So it took a while, first for the trauma to happen, and then for you to even acknowledge, and now the process, and then the healing is also a journey. So don't give up on yourself. Ask for help, the way she said. Sometimes you just need someone who's walking with you, even if you can't necessarily afford therapy at the moment, just someone with whom you can have a conversation with. I think a really important aspect that maybe many of us don't focus on is just building healthy coping mechanisms. We all, like you said, stress is a part of it's a part of life. And so we have to figure out how to cope with it in a healthy and productive way. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This conversation was really insightful. As Ernest said in the beginning, let me just reiterate, we are having the symposium on the 16th of May at Sitam Valley Road. The link to register is in the chat, so please feel free to register with us. If you feel like you needed help in any way, you can contact KCPF. As a result of this conversation, please feel free to contact us. But we would really love to have you at the symposium on the 16th. These conversations, like we said last time, there are so many things that are coming at us, and we want to know how to deal with it in a biblical way, in a way that honors God and is healthy and helpful for the society as a whole. Is there anything I haven't said yet, Ernest? Ama, we can pray and release everyone.
I believe you've said everything. So friends, again, we'll be having great conversations like this, great round table discussions like this. We'll also be having presentations from speakers, some from outside the country, some from within the country. Sitam Valley Road, 16th of May, 2025. That is a Friday. It's a whole day event from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please sign up. Again, the link is in the description. I'm going to post it one more time, bit.ly/KCPF 2020F. Please register. It's only 1,500 shillings. That's before end of April. After end of April, it's going to be 2,000 shillings per person, and that will cater for your tea, your lunch, and your tea. 2 teas and 1 lunch, and a wonderful day of interacting with wonderful speakers and other people who are going to be joining us in the roundtable discussions, where we're going to see how to strengthen our family. So please come on that day. We are waiting to see you there. And next week, we'll be having another conversation, same time between 7 to 8 p.m. And we'll be talking about men. What is the role of men in ensuring that the family stands strong? They say we have a masculinity crisis. So you're going to be having a wonderful presentation next week on men. We want to let men know that the family cannot stand without them. So please join us next week. And for people who are asking for the presentation, we'll not have the PowerPoint presentation sent out, but if you go to YouTube, search for Kenya Christians Professional Forum. Kenya Christian Professional Forum. You will find the video uploaded there, and you can listen to it again and take on those valuable notes. I forgot to pray at the beginning, so please allow me to pray right now as we close. And again, I can see more wonderful comments by Shamamba Stella. Shamamba Stella, thank you so much. And for everyone else who wrote, and for the questions we did not answer, we'll definitely answer them at the symposium. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for Bansi. Thank you for her ministry. Thank you for Genius League and for the wonderful work she's doing in healing children and healing adults so that we can have healthy families, so that the nation can stand. Would you remember her? Would you bless her? Would you establish her? Would you meet all her needs according to your riches in glory? And would you also bless those who've attended? Let them take this knowledge and let it edify them. You said in your word in John chapter 13, verse 17, now that we know these things, we'll be blessed if we do them. So, Lord, help us do them. Help us not just listen and go away feeling nice. Let us put them into practice so that our lives will be enriched. And we ask that, Lord, you go ahead of us in the symposium so that we can gather and have a wonderful time with the men and women who are going to be there, so that our families can heal, our families can be improved, our families can be better as we promote and protect family values in challenging times. We bless you and we honor you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Ernest, and everyone for joining us. Hopefully, we'll see you next week and definitely at the Family Symposium. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for coming.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.